Locating inner personalities. A good way to connect to inner parts of yourself is to think of each dream figure as an actual person living inside you. Think of each person in your dream as one of the autonomous personalities that coexist within your psyche and combine to make up your total self. Then the question becomes, where have I seen this person at work in my life lately? Where in my life have I seen her, if she is a woman, doing what she did in the dream? What part of me is it that feels like that, thinks like that, behaves like that? If she brings conflict in the dream, then try to find the part of your personality that is in conflict or rebellion. If she seeks relatedness and affection in the dream, look for the part of you that has been looking for friendship, loving, falling in love. If she pulls you out of the gutter, as did the girl with the sparkling eyes in the dream that follows step 3, then look in your life to see where some strength, some interest, some insight has pulled you out of the gutter recently. And there you find her at work in your life. You may see as you look at your dream person that he or she is a manifestation of one of the basic personality structures, one of the primary energy systems that make up the psyche. A woman in your dream may exactly fit the description of the shadow, if you are a woman, or fit the description of anima, if you are a man. This discovery will give you some added hints about where you can expect to find this inner person in action in your life. But if a man, for example, finds that a dream person in his anima, his work does not stop there, he has to find specifically where she is active in his life. He has to find the feelings he has felt, the flow of fantasy that has seized him, the mood he has been in, the encounter with the inner world, whatever it is that shows exactly what has been going on in his life that he associates with the soul feminine. It is a mistake to jump to conclusions and to call your inner persona anima or shadow or one of these terms if you are not really sure. For every dream person who fits clearly within one of their archetypes, there are many others who don't. They are just persons in your dream. In that case, don't force them into a mold. Let them be who they are. In order to find this dream person inside yourself, a good place to begin is to make a description. Write out what kind of person you think this is, what the person's main characteristics and personality are, what the person wants and means to you. Then you can look for the part of your personality that matches the description. If the person is intolerant and moralistic, you look for the part of your character that is intolerant and puritanical. There you will find your dream person living in you and through you. Often, your dream gives the person a name. If not, you can invent a name that seems to capture the person's character. Or you can use a descriptive name. If it is a masculine figure, it may be brave warrior, wise elder, old miser, sneaky crook, juvenile delinquent, young prince, trickster, tribal brother. If this is a feminine figure, you may find yourself calling her wise mother, tyrant mother, earth mother, faithful sister, my lady soul, lady of the sparkling eyes. If she fits the mythical role, you may give her a mythical name. Helen, Iseult, of the white hands, Guinevere. It is best if we get acquainted with our inner personalities as persons in their own right before we start putting distance between us and them by using psychological classifications and jargon. You will get much closer to your inner feminine if you know her as Lady Ingrid, for example, and think of her as a special and interesting being who lives inside you. Then, if you call her the anima and turn her into a clinical abstraction. Thus, if a feminine figure appears in a man's dream, he should not start describing her from the standard texts on anima. He must allow her to describe herself and be a unique, individual being who came to visit him in his dream. He must allow her to have her individuality. In the same way, when a woman finds a masculine figure in her dream, she should not jump to the conclusion that this is her animus and start automatically applying all the doctrines that pertain to the animus. She should get close to this inner person and find out what his character and functions are, learn from him directly what information or qualities he has to offer and what his role is in her inner world. Identifying other inner realities. Of course, the images in dreams are not only the dream people. There are also places, buildings, animals, colors, numbers, objects, and abstract geometric symbols. Dreams present an infinite variety of images, and all of them are used to symbolize in some way the flow of your inner life. In one way or another, you can always picture the dream image as something located inside yourself. For example, if it is a place, then it is a place inside you, and you can locate it. A place in a dream may represent a place to stand, in a moral sense, an ethical position you need to take. A place like the Castle of the Holy Grail represents a level of spiritual consciousness and also a goal toward which your inner growth is moving you. A dream place may also represent an emotional environment, a set of circumstances, or a sphere of influence. Remember our preoccupation with the blue room. The main association was an emotional environment. The ego was sitting in the midst of a blue feeling, a depression. One of the most frequent uses of places in dreams is to show you whose turf you are on, whose influence you are under. So a good way to understand the significance of a place is to ask who it belongs to. Ancient astrologers formed the practice of speaking symbolically of the house of Mars or the house of Saturn or some other planet. It meant that your psyche had fallen under that planetary influence. You were visiting in its house. When you enter into one of these symbolic houses, you enter a different psychological environment, a different field of energy. In the same way, if you find yourself in the house of your maternal grandmother, you know that you are in the sphere of influence of the Great Mother. It means that, for better or worse, you were under her spell on the evening when your dream was hatching in the unconscious. It may mean that you are on the verge of a great revelation of the Queen of Heaven. If you are lying in the gutter in front of her house, however, it more likely means that you are caught in the negative side of your mother complex, caught in passivity and dependency. Only the circumstances of your dream will tell you for sure what it means to be in the house of the mother. If the house belongs to you, it probably represents your ego house, the field of consciousness of the ego. The world of the ego builds up around itself, made up of what you know, what you think, what you believe, and the walls erected to protect you from the unconscious. If your house is invaded from the outside, it generally means that the ego's world is being invaded by forces from the unconscious. You are being confronted, perhaps, with realities, values, and parts of your own self that you have managed to avoid until now. If you find yourself in a country ruled by an evil sorcerer or a military dictator, it may mean that you are under control of your power drive. If you ride through a blessed land ruled by an ancient and wise king or queen, the dream is giving you a foretaste of what life feels like when we live attuned to the archetypal self, aligned with the highest wisdom within ourselves. What about animals? If it is an animal, you may think of it as an animal instinct or animal consciousness that lives somewhere inside you, buried in the deepest primordial pre-human roots of the psyche. It is one of the energy systems from which you are constructed and has to be taken into account. It barks from time to time if it is neglected. Just as people have characteristics that you can identify with, so do animals. Animals, like many other archetypal symbols, have both positive and negative connotations. Dogs are a good example. Dogs are pack animals, like wolves and coyotes. A dog in your dream could refer to the human tendency to follow the pack, to get so involved with the group, with groups and collectivity and belonging, that we cease to develop an individuals or to have an inner life. For humans, we find we are also pack animals. It is a strong instinct in us, one that brings out both the best and the worst in human nature. On the other hand, dogs are supremely loyal. The humble image of a dog in your dream may refer to an enable quality in you, a capacity for the deepest loyalty. Sometimes it is difficult to tell from a dream whether the positive or negative connotations is to be taken. Sometimes the dog may be a warning, sometimes a powerful affirmation. Usually some very small detail in the dream will tell us which way to take the symbol. Jung found that animals often represent primitive psychical and instinctual energy systems within us. They may correspond to a physical need for food, rest, or existence, or a need for erotic and sensual experience. A fight with a threatening animal in a dream may signal a conflict between the needs of your deep instinctual side and the civilized attitudes of your conscious mind. When they appear in mythical form, animals also represent the great archetypes of the highest stages of spiritual consciousness and development. The elephant represents in Hindu symbolism the highest manifestation of true self. And the elephant sometimes appears in the dream of a Westerner with the same meaning. In my own dreams, the white cobra comes to me often as a manifestation of the self, of the highest consciousness within me. The examples I have given you in the last few pages represent only a tiny sampling of the infinite opportunities you have for connecting your dream images accurately to your inner self and the dynamics of your inner life. There could never be enough space in this book or any other book to cover all the symbols that might arise and the various ways they might connect to your life. And if we tried to do that, we would only mislead. For as I have been emphasizing so strongly, the real connections between your dream symbols and your inner life can only truly come out of you, out of the fertile soil of your own unconscious. Dreamwork illustration: The girl with the sparkling eyes. As an example of how we can do this step with an actual dream, I will now present another dream, together with the connections that could be made to the inner life of the dreamer. This dream was brought to me by a college student, 22 years old at the time. She came for analysis when he came for analysis when he was unable to continue college because of a severe neurosis. He had reached with the point where he couldn't study or pass his exams. He was in a state of despair. This was the first dream in the analysis. It beautifully depicted the state he was in, showed us what inner systems were involved, and pointed him in the direction he needed to go. The dream predicted the dramatic healing of the neurosis, which took place almost immediately after he began doing inner work. He is one of those people who can't live without an inner life. But once he recognized this, everything changed rapidly. He finished his education and now leads an unusually full and useful life. In honor of the manifestation of his anima who appears here, I call the dream of the girl with the sparkling eyes. The dream of the girl with the sparkling eyes. I was lying in the street in front of my grandmother's house. An auto came from behind, containing my sister and her friend. I was afraid that the car would run over me, and I rolled toward the curb as quickly as I could. Then they were beside me. My sister asked me if I would like her to arrange a date for me with one of her friends. She mentioned a couple of names. I couldn't decide. Then my sister was gone. Her friend asked me what I wanted to do about the date. I thought for a minute and then thought suddenly that possibly this girl would like to spend the evening with me. Just as I thought this, I remembered that I hadn't really noticed what she looked like. I asked her for a date just as she was walking away with her back turned. She turned around and I was happy to discover she was attractive. She was the girl with sparkling eyes. I asked her if she would talk with me, and she agreed. As she returned to me, I got up out of the gutter and walked away with her. For purposes of the exercise with this dream, we have to assume that we have already been through the first step and made our associations, and some of them have clicked. Now in the second step, we have to apply those associations to specific dynamics in the inner life of this college student. Here are some connections that he could have made. Second step. What part of me or what dynamic in my inner life does the dream image refer to? My grandmother's house. Since it is my maternal grandmother and my mother was born there, this must be the house of the mother inside me. It goes back generations. So it's perhaps more than just mother complex. It is the archetypal mother, the mother energy or mother presence inside my psyche. This is her territory. So it says that I, the ego, am in her territory. The ego is caught in the territory of the Great Mother, and in some way I am under her influence. Now, where have I seen this functioning in my everyday life? There is a side of the mother principle, a regressive relationship that I can get into with it, where I start acting like a child who can't do anything for himself and just wants the world to take care of him. I feel dependent. I don't want to make decisions. I don't want to do anything for myself. And I just want someone to mother me. On this negative side, the mother energy has turned into a dependency complex. This is what I have seen in myself lately. I've given up my native masculinity. I'm afraid to venture out in the world and make my own way. I feel like I'm enveloped in the feminine side of myself, but in a negative way that makes me feel childlike and dependent. Lying in the street. Where has this been going in my life? I see it immediately. I have been depressed, in despair, unable to function at school, paralyzed, not knowing which way to turn. The image is an exact symbol of how I feel, like someone lying in the gutter, unable to get up, helpless. I feel that anyone can come along and take a kick at me or run over me. I have no defenses and I can't help myself. Another association has clicked is that this is a public thoroughfare. This is a public thoroughfare. It is not my own space, it belongs to them, out there. It seems that I am not only lost in the material feminine, I am also lost in collectivity. What do I find in my life that corresponds to that association? As I think about it, I realize that I have been revolving completely around what I think other people want me to do or expect out of me. My going to college, the courses I took, the career plans have basically come from some collective expectations that I assume I had to live up to. I don't know whether they came from my family, from the society around me, or wherever. It scarcely matters. The point is that I have to start looking for the way of life that belongs to me, decide what values I want to serve, decide what is important to me, and start making my own decisions. I think the only way I can get out of the street is to find the little plot of ground that really belongs to me and stand there. I have to give up lying in the street and just stupidly accepting whatever collective notions came to me from the society around me. My sister. If my sister in the dream represents a person living inside me, where is that in a person? Where do I have a feminine personality that is like my sister? One thing that clicks with me about my external sister is that whenever I am in a mood or depression, she will act like this person in the dream. She tries to cheer me up, tries to draw me out of myself, tries to get me connected to the human race. Now that I look for it, I see that I have a feeling inside me of wanting to connect up with people, wanting to find a friend I could be very close to. I don't want to be lonely. Yet, I act just the way I act with the sister in the dream. I refuse to have anything to do with people. I act like a loner, preoccupied with my depression and my problems. I refuse relatedness. In the dream, this is symbolized by my being unable to make decisions when she offers to set up a date. Maybe I don't want to get into dates at this point because I'm waiting for the girl with the sparkling eyes. And I don't know it. So I think my sister is the feminine force inside me that wants to draw me into relatedness with other people and with human life. But I can't seem to respond to that yet, because first I need to find my soul. The girl with sparkling eyes. I think of my ideal of the eternal feminine, the feminine presence I long for, as the girl with the sparkling eyes. She feels somehow divine to me, like a princess or a goddess. When I see her, when I feel she's in my life, when I feel as though I'm complete, as though I have something to live for, as though life has meaning. So she fits the description of the anima. She symbolizes my soul. This is the aspect of the feminine that, unlike the sister, leads me toward the inner world, towards the spiritual world, toward inner experience and religious consciousness. She, my anima or soul, is the feminine presence inside me who wants an experience of God, who wants to explore the unconscious, wants to live in the world of dreams and archetypes. The amazing thing is that as soon as I see who is she in the dream, I come out of my paralysis. I get up and can walk. I start to live and function again. Where do I see all this going in my life? First, I have felt, in a manner of speaking, my soul longing for a different level of life. I came here and started to learn how to look at my dreams because I sense that there is an empty spot in me. I feel the need for an inner life. I feel an inner void. I want religious meaning, religious experience, or something that will give me a sense of the underlying meaning in my life. All of that going on inside me seems to be her presence. It is the girl with the sparkling eyes, my soul, at work in me. These are her feelings that I am feeling. I have fantasies of a new spiritual life, of delving deep into the mysteries of the unconscious. These must be her fantasies coming out of my mind. I asked her if she would talk to me. I asked her for a date, but it feels like the real turning point is when I ask her if she will talk to me. I'm trying to set up a simple conversation, but it feels like the beginning of an exchange, a relationship. Where do I find this going on inside me? As esoteric as it sounds, I think I am trying to find my soul. I'm trying to set up a relationship to my own soul. Perhaps in the moment that I decided I would write down my dream and begin to look at dreams, start to live in the inner world. That was the moment when I said to my soul that I wanted to talk with her, that I wanted to get connected with my inner psyche and begin a friendship. I got up of the gutter. I can associate getting up of the gutter with a very specific change inside of me. As soon as I started understanding a little bit of this dream and started wanting to have an inner life, I started feeling better. I don't feel as helpless now. I don't feel paralyzed and at the mercy of the world. I feel that there is something that I can do to get life going again, to understand that what is going on inside me. Opening up the inner world means that hope and life force returns to me. I don't have to lie in the gutter in passivity and paralysis. Our dreamer was able to connect his dream experience to some very specific things going on in his emotional life. The dream was amazingly on point for much of what he was feeling and experiencing. He felt absolutely helpless and defeated by life at that time. The dream showed this vividly with the image of his lying in the street, completely passive, utterly at the mercy of passerby. This dream gives us a good example of a way in which archetypal amplification becomes helpful. In this case, it provides us with a lot of information about the anima, so that we can see where she is at work in his life. Once we see that the girl with the sparkling eyes is a soul figure, a manifestation of anima, we can surmise several things. We know that anima leads us toward the inner world, that she is primarily concerned with the inner life. From this, we can see that the meeting with this special person and the beginning of a relationship with her coincides with his decision to go to the inner world through his dreams, to renew his inner life. This is, after all, the most direct way of going to anima and making relationship with her. Step 3. Interpretations. The interpretation of your dream is the end result of all the work you have put into the earlier steps of dream work. The interpretation ties together all the meanings you have drawn from the dream into one unified picture. It is a coherent statement of what the dream means to you as a whole. At this stage, you ask questions like, what is the central, most important message that this dream is trying to communicate to me? What is it advising me to do? What is the overall meaning of the dream for my life? We don't have the right to make an interpretation of a dream until we have gone through the two earlier steps. Trying to make an interpretation without first making your individual associations is really just guesswork. If you take a ready-made interpretation out of a dream book, it is like wearing someone else's clothing that doesn't fit you. The interpretation should flow naturally out of the first two steps. The associations begin to tie together in your mind. The connections to your inner life become clear, and out of this is born a sense of the dream's overall meaning. As part of your interpretation, you should try to make a simple statement of the one main idea that the dream communicates. Ask yourself, what is the single most important insight that the dream is trying to get across to me? Using the dream of the girl with the sparkling eyes, I have prepared a sample interpretation to illustrate the kinds of ideas that might come out when you start to tie your dream together into an overall picture. As you read this example, remember that I had the advantage of working with the dream years ago and seeing what became of the dreamer in aftermath of the dream. So the interpretation comes out of me a little more smoothly and coherently than it would if it were my own dream and I were trying to interpret it for the first time. When you begin to interpret your dream, don't expect your interpretation to come out in coherent form of the first try. Just write down your ideas about how you think the entire dream fits together and the meaning that it has for your life. Keep working at it until it makes sense and fits with the overall pattern of events in the dream. I have put this example into the first person, as though the dreamer were talking, for purposes of illustration. Interpretation: the dream of the girl with the sparkling eyes. What is the overall picture of my life that this dream brings to me? The dream gives me a way to understand my emotional reactions, my depression and paralysis, and my inability to function at school in the last several months. I have been stuck in a severe neurosis. Since the neurosis is actually an unworkable gap between my conscious attitude and the needs of my unconscious, I can see something of what has been going on. My conscious attitude has been one of plowing ahead, trying to succeed in college, and taking up the career that I now feel was dictated to me by the world around me. But my inner being is demanding something quite opposite, which comes under the healing of an inner life. That means meditation, working with my dreams, finding out who I am, realizing that I have a soul, just as humans used to believe, in the old religious sense, that they had a part of themselves that connected them to God and called it the soul. In the dream, the results of my trying to succeed in the collective world and stay in my dependent mother complex is shown by the image of my lying in the gutter, absolutely helpless, passive, and dependent. The dream shows me three kinds of feminine energy inside me that are active in my life right now. First, the Great Mother. I have been caught in the negative side. I've gone completely passive and dependent. and that has resulted in the terrible paralysis I've been in, my inability to function at school. But the other, even deeper reason underlying all this is that I haven't been living the life or pursuing the qualities that my deeper inner self is concerned with. I've been pursuing what I thought other people expected of me, but not what my deepest instinct would lead me to. So lying in the street in front of my maternal grandmother's house tells me that I'm caught in the mother complex, in this regressive childish sense, depending on others to tell me what to do and what to think. Another side of feminine at work in me is represented by my sister. This earth feminine wants to lead me back into relatedness to women and to the world at large. That is good, but I can't do it while I am lying helpless in the mother complex and collectively derived way of life. I have to learn how to relate to my inner self before I feel I can relate correctly to the people outside myself. Otherwise, they seem to pull me into a collectivity that harms me rather than helps me. The other feminine presence in me is the girl with the sparkling eyes. I identify her as the image of my soul, my inner psyche, my anima. She is the force in me that pulls me toward the inner world, religious meaning, and the discovery of my own unconscious. She is like a goddess with sparkling eyes who could take me on the journey through the hidden world of my inner self, my soul, and show me how to live with who I am instead of what I think I ought to be. How can I apply this information? First, I think that I have to give up for a while, trying to be somebody, trying to succeed in the academic world or the competitive world of success and power and social approval. Instead, I need to do in my daily life what I do in the dream. Go off with my own soul for a while and make it a journey of discovery into my own self. I should take the time to dream, remember my dreams, work on my dreams, do inner work, try to find out what my deepest conscious self wants of me, how it says I am to live. And then I think I can live without being in such terrible inner conflict and without winding up in the gutter again. According to this dream, to meet with my soul and explore my inner self is the only path open to me. That is the only thing that pulls me out of the gutter, puts strength into my legs, and enables me to stand up again like a man. As you read over this interpretation, you can see it naturally grows out of the first and second steps of dream work that we have already gone through. By identifying which parts of his self are symbolized by the feminine figures in the dream and seeking where they have been affecting his life, he is ready to make an assessment of the dream's central message. It even leads to decisions about how to live his life in the future. An adequate dream interpretation should sum up the meaning of your dream in a nutshell. It should also provide a specific application of the dream's message to your personal life. So what you are doing, how you are going to live. To what you are doing, to how you are going to live. Choosing between alternatives. Sometimes you find that you can create several interpretations from your associations with the dream, and they all make sense. How do you decide among these possible interpretations? Sometimes you have one association with the symbol that is positive and encouraging, but another association that is negative, warning you that something is not right. How do you decide which association is the right one. Several approaches can help you decide the more likely interpretation. The most important technique is one that we have already learned. Write out your interpretations. When you write out interpretation on paper, it has a remarkable effect. It brings it off the level of fantasy and abstraction and gets it into a form that you can see clearly. With the act of writing, you begin to get a better feeling about whether it really makes sense to you or not. When it was spinning around in your head, it may have sounded fine to you. But when you write it down, you start seeing the holes in it. You see that it doesn't really correlate with the dream. It doesn't match what has been going on in your life. By writing it down, you see if it really hangs together, if it really clicks. Determine energy intensity. Because your dream is composed of energy systems, a good test for an interpretation is whether it has energy behind it. If the interpretation arouses energy and strong feelings in you, if it suddenly gives you insights into your life, if you suddenly think of other areas of life where this interpretation makes sense, if it offers insights and liberates you from patterns you've been stuck in, all of these are signs that there is a tremendous energy behind this interpretation. When you write out another interpretation, you are likely to find that it simply has no energy in it. It withers, it dies. You can't connect it to anything that has life or power for you. This is a good sign that the interpretation is not good for this dream. Following small cues. In every mystery, there is always a tiny clue, noticed only by the most observant, that leads to the solution. This literary ploy actually reflects an archetypal pattern in life and in dreams. Every dream provides us with some small detail, some small clue that tells us with which interpretation to follow or how to take the dream. 10 years ago, a friend of mine was offered a job that sounded wonderful. He would start out as a full partner in the firm, would have challenging work, boundless opportunities. He was excited, but something told him to wait a couple of days before he made a decision. That same night, he dreamed that a beautiful and voluptuous woman in a seductive evening gown walked toward him and let him know that she was his for the asking. He decided to go with her, but then she drew close. When she drew close, and he looked into her eyes. Her eyes were a strange, otherworldly shade of green that made him queasy and frightened him. He backed off. The next day, the correlation between the seductive siren and the seductive employment offer was all too clear to him. He felt that he had projected his anima onto the new job possibility, but the dream was warning him that this was the witch aspect of an anima. There was something inwardly wrong about the job offer, some hidden barb, so he refused it. He later found out through other sources that the firm was dishonest, and he realized that he could not have survived there. He also found out about the archetypal meanings of the color green. Like every other color, green has both a positive and a negative connotation. When the color appears in nature, in trees and meadows, it is the symbol of life force, the energy in nature that bursts forth in springtime. On the positive side, it symbolizes the renewal of life, but on the negative side, it represents poison, the venom of the snake, the pus in the wound, the secret venomous quality in the human race. One is said to be green with envy, for example. The sickly, unfriendly shade of green in the eyes of the seductress dress was the clue, the special detail that told us how to interpret an ambiguous dream. A good job, a business opportunity, nothing wrong with that on the surface. And a beautiful feminine figure approaching you in your dream can be something excellent, the positive side of a woman's shadow, the appearance of a man's anima, a consciousness of the sensual and erotic, the opening up of one's feeling function. But if the shade of green in her eyes causes your hackles to rise, you have your clue. Harold Goddard, the great Shakespearean scholar, has shown us that the principle is true in the plays of Shakespeare and perhaps in other great literature. The example that he gave, as I recall it, was the scene in Romeo and Juliet, in which Juliet's father is discoursing on what kind of son-in-law he wants. He wants Juliet to marry someone who is rich and from another strong, wealthy family that would form an alliance with his own. All this sounds fairly normal and neutral for 15th century intellect. It doesn't give us any terrible feeling about where the play is headed. But then there is one detail seemingly insignificant: the complaint of the maidservant. She says that the father's attitude is the same as selling Juliet into prostitution. He will sell her to the highest bidder, to the one who will bring in the most cash. The maid's statement gives us the small clue we need that things are not going well at a deep level in the destiny of this family. There is a deep split in its sense of values. Things are going badly, and the seeds of the tragedy ahead have already been planted. In your own dreams, learn to watch for these small details and read what they are saying. They will make the difference in the understanding a situation that would otherwise seem ambiguous. Arguing from opposites. If you find that the interpretation is still not coming clear, you can decide between the opposing interpretations. Play devil's advocate with each explanation of the dream. Take sides, like an attorney, and argue strongly for each point of view, one at a time. First, argue it affirmatively. Argue that it would be absolutely correct from an inner standpoint for you to take the job. Argue that it allows you to have the lifestyle that your dream prescribes for you. Argue that it would leave you plenty of time for your family, your inner work, and recreation. Gather all the evidence you can form your dream and list it. Then argue the opposite position. Be the devil's advocate. Argue that the dream says you should stay where you are and maintain the status quo. Argue that you should put your energy into strengthening your inner life and healing your neurotic splits, rather than wasting your time getting into new jobs and new power plays. Argue the dream as warning not to take the path of the direction that the dream seems to refer to. Argue with the yin and the yang. Argue from the feminine instinct in you, then from your masculine side. Argue that you should leave it to fate and wait, then argue that you should take decisive action. By playing devil's advocate, we force ourselves to align with each point of view within us, in its turn, until we see which one really reflects the lesson of this dream. You will usually find that there is some truth in both interpretations, and your final understanding will be a synthesis of different viewpoints. Sometimes a dream says that there is no one right choice. You may take either path, and the dream tells you what the consequences will be for the one you choose. The dream tells you what price you will pay. The dream may be saying, "Look, here is the attitude you should take, but if you persist in the other attitude, here are the consequences that will follow." The unconscious is fair with us. It allows our egos to do exactly what they insist on doing. So long as we take responsibility for our choices and accept the consequences. Even when we take the wrong turn, as we frequently do, we gain consciousness and learn from experience, again, provided we accept responsibility for it and face the results honestly. Even something that seems wrong turns out to be of benefit if we are able to learn from it. But the one thing that our unconscious will not tolerate is evasion of responsibility. The unconscious pushes us into one suffering after another, one impossible mess after another, until we are finally willing to wake up, see that it is we who are choosing these impossible paths, and take responsibility for our own decisions.